Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Auction for the Soul. This week's Perashat is Perashat Vayakhel. And, we're nearing the end of the second book of the 5 books of Moses. We're ending the last couple of chapters of the book of Exodus. And as Moses, at this point, Moshe, our teacher, had already dealt with the golden calf and the Jewish people sinning with the golden calf and bringing down the Luchot Shniyot, the second tablets. Here we start with the Parsha with Moshe telling us, "Vayakhel Moshe kol adad bnei Israel," and Moshe, he assembles all the Jewish people and he says to them, "Ela hadvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asot otam." These are the things that God had created for us to do. Okay, la'asot otam, that's proactive. This is us being proactive. You get up, don't live life sitting passively. Get up and go do something. La'asot otam. Sheshet yamim ta'aseh melacha. 6 days, you got to do work. But Yom HaShvi'i yeh lachem kodesh Shabbat Shabbaton la'Hashem. On the 7th day, what happens? You got to rest. You have something called Shabbat. Kol ha'oseh bo melacha yumat. Anyone who does any kind of work on Shabbat is put to death. Lo tavru esh b'chol mashvotechem. Don't allow fire to go through all your dwellings. B'yom Shabbat, and then it automatically comes to a stop. Okay, so we learn about Moshe, bringing the people together, teaching us about the laws of Shabbat, and then it tells us Vayomer Moshe al kol adab bnei Israel. Zeh adavar asher tziva. Then he says, all out of nowhere we stop. It's like Vayomer again, and now this is what Hashem tells us: Kuchu mitchem truma. Take from everybody a portion. La Hashem, kol nidiv libo yeviel truma. Everyone who wants to bring this truma for God, zahav, gold, kesef, silver, nechoshet, copper, tchelet, sky wool, argamon, purple wool, tolat, shiny, a crimson wool, b'shesh, linen, v'izim, and goat hair. All these different kinds of leathers, go bring them. For what? Et the mishkan, et ohalov, et machsehu. This is for the tabernacle, the tent, and its covers. Okay, and it keeps going on through all the different lessons of all the different items that are needed for the construction of the tabernacle. Okay, and then it says with the Yitzu called up in Israel, and all the Jews left. They heard this. They heard exactly what he wanted, and so on and so forth. Every person whose heart was inspired. Okay, but kol asher nadav rucho to heviu et shumat Hashem. All these people brought whatever was needed for the construction of the Ohel Moed, the tent of meetings. Everything that was needed for all the different clothing that was necessary for the priests, that was all brought also. Okay? And everything is being brought, and it's amazing. Like, this is the Jewish people literally standing up, feeling a sense of responsibility, and each one of them bringing a different objects, material necessary for the construction of the actual Ohel. Okay, okay, fine. So now let's just take a step back for a second. So this is the beginning of the Parsha. Parsha is Vayakhel Moshe. He's aligning the people up, and this pasuk begins in a very strange kind of way. Why does it say Vayomer Hashem al Moshe first? Why is Moshe gathering the people? And typically speaking, whenever there's a gathering of the people, it's usually Moshe bringing down with Aharon, and then Aharon to Yoshua, to the 2 children of Aharon, Eliezer, and so on and so forth. There's a breakdown of how information was passed down. Over here, it's going directly to the people. So the first thing is, this is the first Shabbat afternoon class that was ever given. There's actually a halacha that or an inyan and halacha that you're supposed to go ahead, and the rabbi is supposed to give a class on Shabbat afternoon, and this source is from right over here. And in the same way, I'm so sorry about the background noise. In the same way that Moshe is teaching Am Yisrael over here for the first time on Shabbat afternoon, we have this idea of getting all the people together and hearing a class on Shabbat afternoon. So this is the source for it. The first time a Shabbat afternoon class was given was 3,300 years ago in the desert by Moses. Okay, so it's clear that the real big chunk of this Parsha is really about the Mishkan. And then if that is in fact the case, then why bother starting with these ideas of Shabbat? We already know the Shabbat. We heard it so many times already. We heard the Shabbat in Bereshit, the first chapter of the book of the 5 books. The first chapter of Genesis, at the end of it, Kishesh Jemi Masash and the Shemayim, it talks about the construction of Shabbat. Over here, there's a new element that's added, the idea that you can't do work, and if you do work, you die, and you can't light a fire, and that's punishable by death as well. Why such a deep, very difficult, harsh decree over here? And what is the correlation between the Shabbat and the construction of the tabernacle and the tent, right? Just if the whole purpose over here is really to get to the construction of the Ohel, right? Then just get to that. And then in addition to that, why is this being taught over here, right? Tell me all of this in Vayikra, in the next book. We're almost at the end of Exodus. Tell me the rest of the Exodus story. Why are you adding all of this stuff over here for me? I don't need to know this right now. I could learn this later. And there's a reason why there's a juxtaposition between this Perashat Vayakhel and Perashat Ki Tisa, the construction of the golden calf. And here, and some of the Chachamim will say, well, listen, the tabernacle was really a way of rectifying the sin of the golden calf. And that the sin of the golden calf was the fact that Jews no longer saw the unification of God in the world. They just saw things as being broken up in different parts. And the Jews, during the time of the Chet Egel, said, Eila Elokim, these are our gods, in plural. They lost the ability of seeing a direct response of God's interaction with the world. They just saw things being disparate and broken up into different pieces. And therefore, the tent itself, its tikkun, its way of fixing the problem, so to speak, for the Jewish people, was by helping them recognize that all big things are made up of small things. And the small things help us see this one big thing, one idea. But Shabbat, let's double click on Shabbat. What is it? What am I supposed to walk away with? What am I thinking of? We spend 1/7 of our life dealing with it, right? Every 7 days we have our Shabbat. What are we supposed to be thinking of? So unfortunately, most of us end up thinking about all the things we can't do. And many children unfortunately relate to it. Oh, it's Shabbat, I can't do this, you can't do that. In reality, that is a problem because Shabbat is often learned from the negatives, the do nots. And the reason for that is the same reason, this is how I explain it to my kids, in the same way that a board game or any game has a bunch of rules. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can only do this, and this is how you do it. That's what Shabbat is. Shabbat is teaching us how to play the game of life. And there's two parts to life, okay? There's the becoming, and then there's the being. The Gemara tells us that Shabbat is a taste, me'ein olam haba. It's 1/60th of olam haba, the world to come, the spiritual plane. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, on the one hand, Shabbat is an opportunity to help us break away from our directive during the week. Our directive during the week is to conquer the earth, to go out and to conquer space. Do what you can, make money, do work on your produce, do whatever you have to do to enrich yourself. That's what we do during the week. But comes Shabbat, no, Shabbat is different. Shabbat is a day of Shesh Yamim Taseh Melacha, 6 days. Excuse me, I do my work. U'bayom HaShvi'i, on the 7th day, Yeh Lechem Kodesh. It's got to be holy. Well, how do I make a day holy? Right? Holiday comes to the word holy. The greatest holiday in Judaism is Shabbat. It's every week. Once a week is the greatest holiday. I love telling this. You know, it was years ago where I went with my wife to buy a new set of china for Shabbat, and she really liked the set. And the salesperson said, "Yeah, these are dishwasher safe." I'm like, "Oh, amazing, dishwasher safe. That's so cool. This is like a very intricate designs and gold." And she's like, "Oh, but you're Orthodox Jews." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, the warranty doesn't work for you." I said, "Well, why not?" Well, you see, when these companies make dishes, it's China, they expect them to only be used like 3 or 4 times a year, maybe 5 times a year. But since you use them every single week, it's not really designed for that kind of usage. Like, we use our china every single week, and we get good usage out of it because for us, once a week we have a chag. Every week is Thanksgiving. It's not once a year. It's not a nice dinner for Christmas once a year. We have 8 days of Pesach. We're eating every 8 days. Right? And then you have Shabbat, you have Sukkot, you have Shavuot, you have all the holidays and so on and so forth. But we know that like every single holiday has a unique mitzvah to it. Rosh Hashanah, you're blowing the shofar, you have Sukkot, you have the lulav, you have the Sukkah itself, right? Pesach, you have the matzot, Chanukah, the menorah, Purim, you have the Megillah. What is this holiday of Shabbat about? How do I express Shabbat? So we express Shabbat through the opposite of what we do during the week. It says over here, Shesh Yamim Taseh Malacha, 6 days you do work, but Yom HaShvi'i is Kodesh. Well, how do I make it Kodesh? So let's break it down for a second. For 6 days during the week, what do? I go out of my way to work hard so I could have and prepare for my Shabbat. What is Shabbat? Shabbat is my day of being. The whole week I'm working on becoming, and Shabbat I'm working on being. This world is a world where I can shape who I am going to be in Olam Haba. This work week is a week of time, of 6 days, where I could shape what I want my Shabbat to be like. And therefore, every single week, I pause, I break away from what I do during the week so that I can create a space and time where I can actually elevate time. You see, we only live for about 120 years. Hopefully, God willing, inshallah, they should be happy, healthy years of tremendous amount of growth. But when you're constantly chasing life, it's very hard to recognize the growth itself. So I'll give you an example. This is a story I often tell. You may have heard from me before, but definitely worth repeating over here. There was a farmer who saved the king's life, and the king wanted to repay him for saving his life. So the king says to the farmer, you know what, in response to what you've done for me, you've saved me, I would like to offer you a piece of real estate. I'm giving you these 4 poles. Take these 4 poles and plot them out anywhere in my kingdom, and that will be your land. He says, okay, great, thank you so much, my king. Takes the 4 poles out, walks out of the castle, puts down his first pole, and keeps walking and walking and walking and walking. And he's like, oh my gosh, it's so much land. I can keep doing this I keep walking for weeks, for months, and he puts down his second pole. And he keeps walking and walking and walking for weeks, months, now years, puts down his 3rd pole, and on the way to put down his 4th pole, he's walking and walking and walking and walking and walking. What happens? He drops dead. That's most people in this world. We spend so much time on becoming, right? We don't put any effort into our being. And therefore, what Shabbat is supposed to do is supposed to recalibrate who we are so that we become something more, right? If all I am is just the money that I make during the week, then I don't live a life of meaning. And you could ask anyone who's in business, they'll tell you that, bankers, specifically people that just work in money without people, they just don't find meaning in their job. Hopefully they're helping people along the way, but the money that their meaning comes from the money they give away, not the money that they make. The meaning we have in life is the families that we raise, it's the things we do for our communities. That's where real meaning comes from. But we spend so much time in our society in training someone to go out and make a career, make a living, have a parnassah, that we often forget that that's not what the purpose of life is. It pains me to think about the fact that there is still war. Like I thought that, I would grow up in a generation where war would be over. Like war, like what's it good for, right? What do we need it? Why do we have, what does it do for us anymore? Like, why are there people fighting with tanks and planes and threatening nuclear? It's crazy stuff. Like we should have grown out of this already. But the fact that we're here means that we've created a society where we've never allowed humanity to overcome their base nature. People think that the purpose of life is to take from their environment. It's my land, my house, my. It's all about me. We did not create a society which is thinking deeply enough about how can I give, how can I help, how can I assist, how can I be better. Shabbat is here to remind us that we only have a certain amount of time of being. In that state of being, in this Olam Haba state, you can't grow anymore. It says that when the body and the soul, when someone dies, it says the soul's consciousness continues, and it's like just taking off a coat, and that consciousness lives in this new state. But the problem with that world of Olam Haba is nothing changes. All you are the choice that you made up until that point. That's what Shabbat is. I can't change things on Shabbat. Shabbat is Shabbat. These are the rules. Nothing grows on Shabbat. That's why I can't do any work on Shabbat. Everything that I do has to happen before Shabbat. It's a metaphor for what happens after we die. I work 6 weeks so I can have a Shabbat where everything is prepared. I spend the next 120 years of my life working and working and working so that everything is prepared. Who do you want to be? Where are you going? It's like, imagine you're sitting on a train for a minute and you turn to the passenger sitting next to you, say, hey, which stop are you getting off on? He's like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Where are you going? Yeah, I don't really care. I'm just going wherever the train goes. No one lives life like that. or maybe everyone lives life like that, but you don't get on a train unless you know where the destination is, right? And unfortunately, many people in this world live life without having a clear understanding of what the destination is. What is the goal? What is the aim? What are we trying to accomplish? So Shabbat is here to recalibrate that. I spend the whole week working. Shabbat, I'm trying to elevate time. How do I make my time in this world meaningful? What questions am I asking to make myself a better, greater human being? How am I being more empathetic to my family? How am I giving back to the world that I'm in, my community? Am I going to that Shabbat afternoon shiur to hear the rabbi speak? Right? What am I doing on my Shabbat? Is Shabbat just about sitting home and doing nothing? Could I say that's really a Shabbat? Can I say that me sitting in bed the whole Shabbat and resting and sleeping, is that me keeping Shabbat? And the answer is no, of course not. That's not keeping Shabbat. Shabbat means you're spending time learning, building, creating the soul, right? It's the elevation of the soul. That's what we want. I want you to spend time with just being you, singing some songs, having a good piece of meat, some wine, tell some stories, spend time with the family, go for a nice walk out in the sun, enjoy the world, but thinking about conquering space anymore. I want this deal, that guy, money, this trip there. No, that's all gone on Shabbat. Shabbat is a time where you just think, you focus on the being, not the becoming. And that's why there are all these strict laws against it. Like, yes, don't do malacha, don't create anything new. The laws of the Mishkan are here to remind you, my friends, that it's so easy to think that, the Mishkan, of course, God wants us to build him a house. Certainly, for that, we should be able to be Mechalel Shabbat. And no, Parashat comes to tell you that the juxtaposition between Shabbat and the Mishkan is to tell you that no, you cannot go ahead and build a Mishkan on Shabbat. And as a matter of fact, the 39 malachot, the 39 laws that are prohibited for us to do on Shabbat, come from the 39 different things that we need to do to construct the actual Mishkan. So there's a deep correlation over here. One is connected to the other. Shabbat is the place that unifies the world for ourselves. We don't have a Mishkan anymore, but we have something called a home. Your bayit is just as holy as the Mishkan, if not holier. And what you bring into your bayit, what you do with it, as far as making it Kodesh, depends on what your Shabbat looks like. How many people, unfortunately, don't know how to elevate Shabbat? And it's just like any other day in their house. But Shabbat is special. You have your special clothing you put on, you have a special tablecloth you put out, your special dishes, special foods you're having, special songs. You're not going to feel Shabbat unless you're invested in making your Shabbat meaningful. How are you elevating it? That's what Shabbat wants. That's what Moshe is telling Am Yisrael. It's funny. You see that over here after the whole thing of all the different lists of the items that Moshe asks the Jewish people to donate for the construction of the Mishkan and the different begadim for the Kohen, right? He reaches out to the princes of all the tribes and asks them, hey guys, we need to collect this material. What do you want to donate? So they say, you know what, Rabbi Moshe, we're gonna donate whatever's missing. We're gonna go back to our tribes and let the tribes know, hey, Moshe needs these things. We'll collect them. Whatever's missing, we'll put in the gap. We'll fill in the gap. So Moshe says, okay, great. What ends up happening is that the Jewish people hear about this mitzvah of bringing all these different items, for the construction of Mishkan. And what happens? They give everything. There's nothing is needed. Nothing is lacking. Every item, every piece of gold, silver, copper, crimson wool, whatever was needed was given. And now the Nesiim, the leaders of the tribe, who said, we'll help out and we'll fill in the gap. Moshe says, there's nothing left for you to give. It's all done. So they end up giving the different stones. Each one gives a different stone that goes into the chosh and the mishpat, the special breastplate that the Kohen Gadol wore. But Rashi points out and says, these guys were lazy. And the question is, why were they lazy? What did they do wrong? It sounded like they did everything right. They were being magnanimous. We want to bring this. We'll support what's missing, and we'll fill in the gap, and so on and so forth. And the answer is no. That's not how it works. You see, if something is important to you, you jump on it immediately. If something truly has value to you, you're not waiting to let someone else share in it. You want it for yourself. So the fact that they went ahead and they gave it over and said whatever they don't fill in, we'll do it, was actually a criticism of them. And this is the nature of the human body. You see, our nature is such that we want to be lazy. We want to be slow and heavy. That's the nature of the body, right? I just don't want to do. It's too hard. Just eat this and that. I don't care. I want to make it simple, don't make it so difficult for me. Rabbi, there's too many things, do's, don'ts. And the opposite is true. Life is all about the boundaries you create for yourself. Laziness is a midah that has to be eradicated by us. You're feeling lazy? Feel unlazy. You're feeling heavy? What are you doing now to work on not being lazy anymore? Because we all agree that laziness is a bad thing. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't rest. Rest. Go on vacation. Spend a day or two on a beach. Get some sun. Chill. I get it. But we're here on this world, on this planet, to do one thing. Look how Moshe said it. He says, Asher tziva Hashem la'asot otam. We're here to do. We're here to build. We're here to create. We're not here to have a Shabbat all week. We have Shabbat once a week. And what are we using Shabbat for? To remind ourselves what the goal is. We're working on developing ourselves to become greater individuals so that when our body and soul separate and all I'm left with is my mind, my consciousness, that is refined. Do you want to have a lazy mind for the rest of your life, for eternity? Or do you want to have a curious, proactive mind? Do you want to have a patient, loving, kind, giving mind? Or do you want to have a selfish, self-centered mind where you'll be alone for the rest of eternity? Because what you do throughout the week, what we do with our lives is forever. You don't want to be like that train passenger on the train that does not have a clue as to where they're ending up and where they're going. You want to be clear with who you are and most importantly, who you want to be. The beauty of this life is that we can choose to be whatever we want. You can choose to be the angry person or you can choose to be the bigger person. Last idea, and then we'll call it Shabbat Shalomski. You see, the mind does not understand how to think in negative terms. When you're going skiing, you could eat and you're skiing through the trees, through the forest. You have a choice to make. You could either say, I'm not going to crash in the tree, I'm not going to crash in the tree, I'm not going to crash in the tree. And by the way, you know what ends up happening? You end up crashing into the tree. Or you could focus on the path that you're on and you'll avoid the trees. That's what life is about, my friends. Do you have a vision of what path you need to be on? Because if you don't, it's like in Alice in Wonderland when Alice says to the cat and she sees a fork in the road, she's like, which way should I go? And the cat says to Alice, well, where do you want to go? She says, I don't know. So the cat says, no, it doesn't matter which way you go. And unfortunately, most of us operate life like that. We have no vision of where we want to end up. But the good news is that Shabbat is here to reboot us and remind us that I can create a vision for myself. Shabbat is a reminder that I could bring Kedusha into the world by creating a boundary and stopping from the doing of the week and asking the important questions of what do I need to become someone bigger, greater. Because eventually we're going to get into the state of being, a state where nothing moves, nothing changes. That is Shabbat, my friends. Moshe is reminding us, you want to build a world? You want to have a world of simcha, of happiness? Don't get caught up on chasing space and trying to conquer space. If there's no place for you to elevate time into something meaningful, you are, unfortunately, will be truly, truly lost. May Hashem bless us with the clarity necessary to find our unique path, to give us the ability of becoming something profound, something that we truly want to be, giving us the ability to overcome our heavy feelings of laziness and recognize that every moment of life is a beracha. It's an opportunity to do something profoundly great. Let's eradicate war. We eradicate war by recognizing that every moment of life is precious and we have no time to waste on stupid border disputes and resource disputes. The whole world is ours together. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.